We're now live. Hi everyone. It is a beautiful sunny Friday afternoon and we are live from the Hive today.
Hey guys, welcome. We are out at the Hansen apiary, which we were at last time we were out here, and today we're doing a couple things. We're going to be doing splits because we're entering into flow here in Alberta pretty soon here. So we're going to be doing prepping for splits, and then we're also going to be prepping to be pulling mating nukes out of everything. So I've already pulled a full round of splits out of this apiary. We pulled 10 splits in the past. That's what Ashley helped me move into the Blue Mountain Biodynamic, these guys' apiary. Now we're going to do another round of splits and more mating nukes. So we've already pulled a significant number of mating nukes out of these colonies. We're going to be pulling some more because we are raising queens for sale this year. So we'll never stop pulling mating nukes. So how it's going to work right away here. Oh, can you see me? Okay. So how it's going to work right away here is I'm going to show you a method that's in our free course coming up next month if you haven't gotten the early bird sign up, which is the method called topping, which is the use of a queen excluder and open brood to lure nurse bees up. So we're going to go through this colony here. It's entirely made up of mediums, and so we're going to inspect it. Can you see? Come over to this side. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to inspect this colony real quick here, and the goal is to use a queen excluder and to have in the upper chamber, I'm just going to make a full-size split with a medium box. So I want to have a lot of open brood in this upper chamber. But we're also looking through to make sure they're not honey bound. Because these colonies have been growing in size very rapidly, I want to make sure that we're not running into any problems where the bees are running out of space, because swarming is always an issue. Swarming in June, sing a tune. Swarm in July, ain't worth a fly. So we don't want to be losing a swarm. So just like any time you're beekeeping, you're always going to be inspecting from the bottom up. So these colonies have all been split once already. Oh, what's broken? Oh, the front. So they've already been split once already. This colony, because it's a medium and all my mating nukes are deep equipment, we have not pulled any mating nukes out of it though. So always tip, 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 tip. And we inspect from the bottom up. So you see these little critters here, these little larvae. This is drone brood. So you're going to consistently have drone brood put between the frames. And if you look down here, you can see that this is why I tip the frames. I'm always making sure that I'm not crushing bees or crushing potential queen cells. You can see queen cups all along here. Doesn't look like any of them are active, but we'll poke at them in a minute. But we want to make sure that we aren't running into the risk of queen cells. So we want to keep this colony in good shape. Any questions coming up, you guys?
Nothing yet. But
Nothing
if
yet.
you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If you're just joining us, we are making splits today.
Yeah, so here's this. We're just going to make a quick split using the topping method. So first of all, I'm looking to see if the brood nest is honey bound. So a full frame of honey in the bottom box, no. There will never be a full frame of honey in the bottom box. So we're going to move this up. So let's have a peek. It looks like there's a fair amount here. So another full frame of honey and pollen. That can't be down here. So we're going to use this box here to move the brood down, and then we're slowly going to shuffle all the honey up, but not into the split that we're making. There might be a frame or two of honey in the split that we're making, mostly just for feed, but that's it. So we've got really nice brood pattern, eggs on the outside, cap brood in the middle, honey on the perimeter with a ring of pollen. This is classic. So cap brood. This colony is going to grow pretty fast. We've got a lot of brood and a lot of feed, especially cap brood. It means they're going to be hatching out pretty quickly here, which means hatching brood A single frame can be a couple thousand bees. So if you've got 10 frames of capped brood, you've got another 20,000 bees soon to be emerging, which is a pretty big population. And that's why we're pulling splits today. I like to make strong splits so that they can still be used in honey production for the season. But it also helps break the brood cycle down too, because I don't use treatments in my management. That's a nice, look at, you can see the brood pattern there, and the queen. Can you spot the queen, people?
Just a quick game of queen spotting here.
Do you see her, Ashley?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, there she is. Pretty girl. So she is in the bottom brood chamber, which is nice because we're going to be shaking bees. So 1 full frame of brood. So right now we're at 5 full frames of brood. There's some nectar in that one, but it's still a brood frame. Now every single hive I have always has 1 or 2 frames of drone brood. And the reason for that is because I always want to make sure my drone congregation areas are really populated. But drones do produce varroa mites. So I'm going to show you guys. I just saw a mite on a drone bee here. Can you see the varroa mite? You see it moving around on the back of that bee? The poor little drone skis. Can you see it, Ashley? Mm-hmm. So they're pretty fast moving. Let me see if I can get that off of him. Sorry, little buddy. Did I get it? Oh, it's hiding between the thorax. Oh, there's a couple actually. Here, I'm just going to kill him to show you. Look at between the thorax and the abdomen. Do you see the 2 there? So producing drones is a part of the breeding process, but also making these splits and breaking the brood cycle is very important for decreasing the varroa mite load. So we don't want to be over threshold. If you're looking at doing a varroa mite wash, so this one is, I'm going to count this as a honey frame. So we've got room for 3 frames of brood below, 3 frames of honey coming up. So when you're doing a wash, this time of year, it's totally useless assessments. Because right now, just in this colony alone, I have 4 frames of capped brood, which means there's mites inside those cappings reproducing. So if I did a wash right now, I might find that my mite count is like less than 1%, which is great. But if it's less than 1%, is that really an assessment of my mite count if they're all reproducing inside cap cells? It isn't. So this is when the washes need to be done in the spring and in the fall. That'll give you an actual right population size of your mite load, because realistically, that's when your brood nest is the smallest, so most of your mites are running around. So let's have a peek in here. So I'm going to continue going through here, pulling honey out of the brood nest and making sure that I have space. So here's a nice big honey frame. That can't be down here. So I'm still tipping them. I'm near the hive with this colony, so keep it going. I just don't want anything happening what's called honey bounds. We've got another frame of honey and pollen. That's coming out. I mean, this feels really aggressive, but really what we're doing is we're making sure that our bottom brood nest is robust with space. So there's a nice open frame of brood. We're going to move that down. Now I'm going to avoid moving, capped brood. I'm going to avoid moving open brood around away from the cluster because I don't want the feeding schedule to be disrupted very much. 1, 2, capped brood. This looks like a frame of open brood. So there it is. It's all open brood. That's going to stay together. I don't want their feeding schedule to be disrupted. That's another frame of open brood. But here, perfect. Nice frame of capped brood. They're not being fed. They're just being tended for heat. That can go there. So here we go. Now let's do the shuffle. Now that I've got the bottom box how I want it, now I can close it into the top. This is why I always encourage you to inspect from the bottom up. This allows you to consolidate and organize your brood nest, but it also allows you to close the hive as you're working. So if the bees do get pissy or rambunctious, you're still doing your important inspection. I know I'm queen right. I've seen eggs. I've seen the queen. Now I'm looking for a spotty brood pattern. I'm looking to make sure they're not honey bound. And then if the bees right now got mad, I could still close it up and I would have all the relevant information I need. Are there any questions at this time for anyone?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So, in this hive, you just moved capped brood to the bottom box.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why you would put empty comb or a frame with foundation?
So foundation is always a great choice. If you have, especially drawing out comb, you want foundation in the brood nest because that's where the warmest temperature is and that's where all the young bees are, and young bees are wax producing bees. So putting in foundation is always a great choice. If you don't have drawn wax, then you're going to be more aggressive with the foundation throughout the spring, just to make sure that if your bees do become overpopulated and there is a concern for swarming, that you have the comb mass that's being developed throughout the season to suppress that. I'm not seeing queen cells anywhere. So putting foundation in here is a really good idea, and I'm glad you brought that up. Especially because we're going to have, I think we're at the point where we're going to have a honey box. We're at 3, 6, 7. So I've got a box here of random stuff, drawn comb, foundation. I'm going to drop a foundation in here. Why not? And then we can keep going. So let's have a peek here. We're into our third brood box. As you can tell, I don't have a queen excluder. Here's another honey frame. Okay. So now we're at 3, 6, 7, 8. We're too short of a box of honey that needs to be ripened for extraction. Here's another one, unripened. So one short of a honey box.
We've got another question here.
Yeah, go for it.
Is there significance to using all mediums?
I actually mix them all up. So I am trying to push my entire apiary into mediums because I hate lifting heavy honey boxes. But because I have a mix of deeps, you can see there's deeps on hives over there, and we're going to be using the deeps for making our mating nucs because I like deep comb for mating nucs. The cavity size is nice to manage. But I also find the balance between managing 2 box sizes a real mental logistical challenge every single season. I mean, Ashley can tell you we just spent a lot of time scraping boxes, sorting between foundation and medium boxes and deeps, and what are we doing? I'm constantly juggling it all. And so I think it's important that whatever you choose to do, you have a plan in place. Or you could be like me, where you just kind of get tired of lifting deep boxes and then realize that, you know what, actually, I just want to, that's nice, full of brood. I'm just going to move all into mediums. So I'm always juggling it. There's no reason you can't use mediums as brood boxes, and there's no reasons you can't use mediums as brood boxes, deeps as honey boxes, or vice versa. Really, the discrimination between the two tends to be about your synthetic pesticide use. So commercially, beekeepers can do brood boxes always in deeps, honey boxes always in mediums, but they organize it that way because then the synthetic pesticides are never exposed to medium boxes. So they're always going to be honey boxes. For me, because I don't use synthetic pesticides, I have an enormous amount of flexibility. So that almost makes it more difficult, because then I'm always kind of trying to logistically figure out, like right now, after we make the split, we're going to set everything up for making mating nucs, which means all my strong colonies need to have deep boxes on them for me to pull open brood from to make mating nucs. So I have to juggle that around.
And then on that same note of equipment, how often do we scrape down our boxes, or do we just replace old supers?
Oh, I scrape them all the time, especially in the shoulder season. In the springtime, I'm scraping the boxes, pulling off propolis. I mean, I'm doing it now still too. I don't do it while the bees are in it. I'm really more of a laissez-faire, if they build it, they can have it type beekeeper. Like for instance, you can see the burr comb on top of here. Unless it's full of honey and the bees are bearding on it, where I know if I compress the colonies together that they're going to crush and kill a lot of bees, I'll leave it. But in my bigger yards, I have a solar wax melter over there. So anything I do scrape off while I'm beekeeping, I kind of ball up as I'm working, and then before I leave, I toss it into the wax melter so that I'm cleaning wax as I go. Because even with doing that, the back of my truck the box is black. It ends up melting on everything, and I've had wax melt onto the interior of my truck, on the dash, all kinds of stuff. So if I can kind of keep the wax isolated, that's good. So the cleaner the boxes are in the spring before the beekeeping season, the less I am dealing with a mess throughout the summer. So these are all open brood frames. This is great. This is what we want for our split. We want lots and lots of open brood. And a honey frame is not a bad thing because we're going to be dividing it. So we want them to have food. So I've got 3-4 frames of open brood. More honey. So now we've got a box of honey here. That's quite a bit. Okay. And then let's see. And a drone frame that has honey in it. So I'm going to leave this in here. So we've got honey on the outsides. This is going to be the box that we split. So now let me grab something else. I'm going to put this on top for now, and let's go into the top box and see what we have here. Because there's no queen excluder on this colony, there could be brood all the way up into the 4th medium. We'll just have to have a peek and see. Now, if you haven't spotted your queen, always inspect your inner cover. But we saw her already on like the 3rd frame in the bottom box. So I'm just going to tip this against the hive, so if any of the bees get lost, they know where they live. And then we're going to have a quick peek in here and see what's going on.
You have someone joining us from Thailand.
Hi! It's not as hot here as it is where you are. I can say that with confidence. So here, this is a nice frame for open brood. Look at the space here. So there's nothing in it. So I'm gonna put this into the 2nd brood box. So here, we're looking into the super, and any excess in the super, we are going, geez, it's a honey frame. We're going to make space so that they can keep growing, but they aren't going to swarm on us. We're always looking to make room, especially before, the beginning of July. So this is an empty comb, more space in here in the brood nest, into the 2nd box. Let's have a look. Some more space, great. I'm just gonna shove this over. So we've got one foundation in the heart of the brood nest in the 2nd box, and then we've got, that's honey. Another honey frame. This is all going to be honey. Okay, so I have a lot going on here. So here inside my brood nest, I've got 3 empty combs, brood, foundation, 3 more brood. The bottom box is 10 frames of brood. Now we're going to start adjusting. So I have empty foundation and drawn comb here. I have 3, 6, 7, 8. So I need 2 frames. So because we're in the brood nest, I'm going to go ahead and do drawn comb, foundation frame, and we're going to plug that in. So we're going to encourage them to draw 2 fresh frames of wax out of this colony. Okay, we're queen right below. We know this to be true. Now we have a box of honey here, a box of honey here, and a split below. Is everyone following? Any questions before I do another manipulation?
All good for now on
Okay, good.
splits.
So we're doing a method that Bill Stagg taught Ashley and I when we were out there. I've done it lots before, but every time I hear it, it's like hearing it for the first time again, because it really is just so simple. So it's using a queen excluder. So normally, queen excluder is to isolate the queen from going into the honey chambers. But right now, what we're using this for is to isolate the queen from a box of open brood. And that box of open brood, we're going to end up shaking. Well, I'm not going to shake them because we know the queen's below. But normally what we would do is we would shake all the bees in these boxes that are above the queen excluder to below. So there'd be bees everywhere. And we're going to do that when we do the topping method in the other colonies. So you'll get to see it if you stay online here. So we're queen right below. And then what we have, this is all honey, so we're going to just keep adding. This is now exclusively a honey box. I'm going to have a spring honey harvest this year. I was just telling Ashley I need to get the extraction room ready because this is what I've been seeing. It's been a beautiful spring here in Alberta for honey production. And so I think I'm going to get a good dandelion harvest. So that's a honey box. So above the queen excluder, this is going to be our split. So we're going to put this back onto the hive because we want all of the nurse bees in the colony to move up and to cover up the open brood in this box. So if I open up the lid here, I just covered them up here for a minute. There's not that many bees up here right now, right? So right now in our split, we've got honey, 4 frames of open brood, and a honey. So we're going to add in the other frames. So we've got 4 frames of empty brood and honey. So this one's our split. So it's going to be queenless, okay? So I'm not going to really, maybe I'll add a foundation to it. So right now you can see the bees are going to start moving up through that queen excluder. So this is going to be our split. So I could mark that even. I'll do that so it makes it a little bit clearer for those of you watching. So I'm just going to put a paint dab here. So that's our split. Okay. So the bees are going to be moving up to cover up that open brood. So I only need to leave it on here for 3-4 hours. And then I can split this onto a new bottom board in this apiary, and the split will be viable because the bees that are going to remain in this box when I move it are going to be nurse bees, which means they have not done orientation flights. They're not oriented to this hive location spot, which means that the bees that are in the split stay in the split. And so it's viable because really the problem with splitting in place is the loss of bees inside your split because they drift back to their parent hive location. So right now we've got our split box. So I'm using smoke to move the girls down. They don't like the breaking of the pheromone communication, so they flee. I swear the smoker was lit a few minutes ago. Okay, now I've got another box of honey that's going to go on top. And when I pull the split, the box of honey is going to stay here. So I'm going to keep it above the queen excluder. I'm just going to come in, pop in, take this box out, and then the honey boxes above will stay above the queen excluder, and then probably next week I'll come and harvest the honey. And then here we go, boom. Come on girls, get out of the way. I like to kind of bump them around a little bit so I don't kill as many, especially because my smoker's not working too great. So these are empty frames, so I'm going to put them in the middle. Maybe the bees will pull it out a little bit, maybe not. Then all these honey frames are going above the queen excluder. So when I come back, really when we're done going through the yard and doing all this today, we're just going to start from where we started this morning, this hive. In a few hours, that once we're done going through the whole yard doing this, we will have exactly what we need in these boxes to make our splits and take them to the new yard. So now we've got our queenless open brood with 4 frames split and 2 full boxes of honey. And it's been supered. And we know that the brood nest is now we know that there's space in the brood nest for the queen to lay because we added 2 frames of foundation in the brood nest plus 3 or 4 frames, I think it was 4 more frames of drawn comb in the brood nest. So the risk of swarming is not an issue. We're also going to be removing restriction out of the brood nest by taking that 4 frames of open brood. And we're also taking a whole bunch of nurse bees, probably about 2 pounds, 3 pounds of nurse bees out of this box that has the 3 dots here. So easy peasy. We just tip those 2 boxes, take this box, put it on a bottom board in our cover. Bob's your uncle. We got our split, our honey supers above a queen excluder, and a brood nest with space. Any other questions coming this way?
Yeah, we have a question on your thoughts about Calgary's new bylaws on urban beekeeping coming in the next year.
I can honestly say I have not read them. and I honestly, I feel like I should have. been more part of it, but I also, I don't know, I'm just really busy. And to be honest, I feel like bylaws are only as strong as those who enforce it. So if you're a good neighbor and a good beekeeper, like as far as like not raising your bees, like keeping them calm, not keeping them aggressive, not maintaining a stupid number of hives in your yard, bylaw doesn't know about it. Do whatever you want. So I'm like a bad influence on that. So yeah, my feedback is nothing. I don't know. Just do what you do, follow the rules, or have a contingency plan if you're breaking the rules and you need to move your bees right away. But that's always the best advice. Every beekeeper in an urban setting should always have a backup apiary location, because you never know. A water main could break, a tree could fall, new siding, a fire, where you're going to need to replace or move your bees immediately. So you should always have a location 5 kilometers away, the way a bird flies, not by car, so that if you do need to move your bees for an emergency situation, that you can overnight with like less than 24 hours notice. That's just good management.
I think be a good neighbor is also a good rule of thumb.
Always be a good neighbor. I had a beekeeper in Edmonton email me last week saying he got a cease and desist order from bylaw because there was a complaint about a neighbor being allergic, and that beekeeper wanted to fight the complaint, and their default was that whatever, bees aren't dangerous. And I argued against that. I said absolutely they are dangerous. If you have an allergy to bee stings and you feel unsafe in your backyard, that is unfair, 100% unfair. Beekeeping is a steward, an environment of responsibility. And if you're choosing to live in the city and keep bees in the city, you have to be empathetic with your community that you live in. Because if you're not, then you're the jerk neighbor, and that's dumb. So if you get if your neighbor's allergic or afraid, you can negotiate. You can say, give me until, if you get your nuke in May, say, well, let's have a meeting the last week of June, and if you really don't like the bees being there still and you've noticed them and they're bothering you, I will have them gone by, Canada Day, July 1st. And I think that is good neighbors, but that's how people find out that having bees in their backyard, the neighbor's backyard, is actually something they may not notice at all, and it doesn't really affect their life. But if someone has a true allergy and they don't feel safe, then you need to adapt and keep bees in someone else's backyard, or out of the country, or just not keep them. Like, that's always an option too. A hobby is a hobby is a hobby. I do it as a business, and I still am inconvenienced by complaints if someone feels allergic, but I absolutely would never keep bees near anyone who felt unsafe. Any other questions?
Yeah, speaking of bees being safe, we have a question. What kind of bees do you have? Must be very gentle to handle bare arms and legs.
Oh, so I've been raising queens for 10 years now, and my base stock comes from Bill Stagg, and his base stock comes from the breeding program in the Vernon area with John Gates, John Corner, Bill Rudzika, this whole like who's who of cool beekeepers in the 80s. And really they were breeding bees to survive Vernon, Salmon Arm area, winter stock. And one of the main selections they made was gentleness. And the other was disease sensitivity and resistance, especially because varroa mites came in with like a pretty big typhoon wave in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. So what I have is that. And so because I keep bees for gentleness, because I run field days historically pre-COVID, and because I also keep bees in the city, like I have bees at Heritage Park, or I have bees at a restaurant in their gardens, my bees have always been selected for gentleness. I do have a couple of hot hives that aren't fun to manage, but I always replace them because I like beekeeping. I enjoy it, and I don't want to get sunstroke wearing a bee suit or whatever. So, and I'm prone to that. So if I can't beekeep comfortably in shorts and t-shirt, then I'm breeding the wrong kind of bees. And so they're just Heinz 57 survivor bees. I always tell people you can't breed from dead bees. So overwintering success is a key selector for the stock that I produce. And with no treatments, the varroa mites do a lot of selecting too. So I split colonies aggressively. I I'm constantly, there's some colonies that are queenless consistently because I'm always pulling brood from them and I'm always breaking them down, but that slows down the varroa mite load. But I do have mites. There was a part of this presentation you saw that the drone had a couple mites on them. So there's always mites in my yards, and some bees do well and some don't.
Yeah, and I can confirm when we were over in BC beekeeping with Bill, we pulled a frame of bees, or yeah, just a frame out, so many bees on the frame, and they were all just chilling. It was really cool to see. Totally
cool to see. Oh, I got stung by the dead bee that was there. Sorry. She was dead with her stinger out. So that is us making a split. So all I'm going to do at the end of the day is I'm going to come and take this box, put it on a bottom board and a lid, and take it to another yard. And I'll do it midday because the foragers don't matter. The big thing in this split is I'm doing this to encourage nurse bee activity in this box. Nurse bees can't fly yet. Any questions about making splits or inspecting?
Looks like we're all good for now.
Great. So, do we want to keep going with making a nuke, or should we stop there for the day?
Let's do it.
Let's build a nuke. Okay. So, these are my nuke boxes that were painted by a whole bunch of COVID kids. I feel like it's some sort of band name. The idea is when schools were canceled last fall, I have a whole bunch of mating nukes, and they're just 4 frame wooden nuke boxes. So what I did was I posted on the Facebook pages and groups and said, if you want to do a fun activity with your kids or yourself, like you don't have to be a kid, come and pick up a box, paint it, and return it. And it was really great. I live on a busy street in the city, and so I set them up and put a sign up, and we had a walkable art installation on our front yard for about a month. So we have these really distinctive nuke boxes, which is awesome because what we want is the queen bees, when they go on their on their mating flights, for them to know where they live. So bees can identify color and shapes, just like knowing the difference between different houses and condo complexes. The different colored doors or numbers help us know where we're going, especially in some of the suburbs that look the same. We're doing the same. So all this creative activities done by the people in isolation have really turned out to be really beautiful. So we're going to take one of these 4 frame nuke boxes and we're going to take it to one of the hives over here. Just want to make sure I have a hive tool on me. No, there it is. I was going to say So let's do hive 99, this hive here. So if you want to step over there, then that'll make it a bit easier. So inside my 4 frame nuke box, I have 2 frames of foundation and 2 frames of mostly drawn comb. And these 2 frames are going to go back into the colony because, again, swarming and space are an issue. I already pulled nukes out of some of these colonies, so open brood up, cap brood and honey below. So we're going to go through the whole hive from the bottom up, just like we went through the other one, and we're going to be looking, right? We're looking for honey and open brood. So let me just grab a lid real quick to put this onto. So I know the queen's not up here because I have a queen excluder on. So you can see that top box is pretty full of bees. Okay, and then we're going to tip this box. Queen excluder, and we're gonna have a look below here because I haven't been below in a while. Oops. Okay. Now let's have a peek here and see. The big thing we want to look for again is honey. We don't want a honey-bound brood nest. As I mentioned that I don't really scrape much. So let's have a peek in the brood nest here and see what's going on. So we're always looking to see. So here's one of those frames of drone brood I told you about. I'm always encouraging drone production, especially in strong colonies. Like 99 is one of my grafting colonies, one of the breeders. So I like having lots of drone production in the colonies that I like, so that when those queens go on nuptial flights, that there's going to be a high likelihood of them mating with stock that I like. Again, it's not controlled. So this frame I'm taking out because it's a honey frame. So let's put this frame back because we don't need more than one frame out at a time for inspections. So we've got a second frame of drone brood mixed with, there's a hatching drone ski here. But lots of, so 2 full frames of drone brood, a little bit of worker brood, chewing out. So I like looking for queens on frames of hatching brood because that's where the most recent no vacancy is coming along. So finding her on either a frame that has no brood in it, like she might have just moved on to it, or open brood. So I'm looking here, there's no eggs. Oh yeah, there's eggs. They're just needing to be tipped over. So this is eggs that are 24 to 48 hours old. So she's down low somewhere likely. So let's see if we'll find her down here. I'm always looking for swarm cells too. So eggs that are tipped over, so 3 days old. So a little bit older brood. We got some burr combs. So this is a foundationless frame. So you can see here that there's nothing there. So we got a nice foundationless frame. Some drone brood. There's a lot of drones in here. Look at them all. And then we've got, there we go, nice frame. This would be a great grafting frame if I was looking at it. Newly hatched larvae. Look at all those drones. Do you think this colony is going to provide quite a bit of drones to that mating yard? It sure is. So we've got a nice frame of pollen and brood. Lots of drones. So in here we've got 2 more frames of honey I can see. Look at that. Big honey frame, big honey frame. So I haven't spotted the queen yet. So these honey frames are getting out of the brood nest because I do not want any swarming out of my yards, especially if I'm going to put the work into raising the queens, especially if the queens are like this colony, like the queens I'm grafting from. Oh, fascinating. Look what I found in the bottom board. Poor bumblebee. She found her way in and didn't find her way out. She has dead in here. Poor little monkey. Okay, so now I pulled 3 frames of honey out, so I'm going to need 3 frames. So I have a collection of empty frames here, so I'm going to put for sure a foundation in. I want to encourage wax production. I'm always pushing and wanting bees to produce comb. So maybe we'll do 2 foundations and a drawn comb. So I don't like to put foundation side by side. So we'll go foundation over there, and then let's do foundation over here. So there we go. We got room for them to lay out, another frame for them to lay out, but I also have got new comb being drawn out by these bees. Beautiful. Okay, now into our queen right, potentially deep box. Oh, wrong one. That's queenless. This one has a queen excluder on it, so it goes next. So let's have a peek. So inside this box I have a frame feeder that I've been using because I was grafting out of this colony. So what we want to move up is frames of open brood on deep frames. I just need 2 to make a single nuke, 4 to make 2 mating nukes. So I've already pulled lots of mating nukes out of these colonies. So let's have a peek and see what we have. So I have a partially drawn out foundation. They put honey in it. I don't see a queen on there. Well, here's a new frame that they've drawn out in the last week. No queen, it's a honey frame too. I'm going to rotate that to encourage equal wax production on this side. Let's have a peek here. They're not quite drawing that out yet, so we'll leave that. Here we go.
This is a global event, Elise. We have someone joining us from Greece.
Oh, hello.
And Cynthia is also here with us.
Hi, Cynthia.
Cynthia is joining us tomorrow for our Better Beekeeping Business webinar.
Awesome. So look at, there's a lot of honey in here. I'm not seeing much brood. I might have stripped all the brood out of the deep frames from them. So I'm looking. I don't see any brood. They're just plugging it full of honey. Maybe we'll be lucky on these last couple of frames. But I want to. There we go. We've got open brood. We've got larva. We're going to snatch this and put this above an excluder. And what we're also looking for is a queen. So I want this in a mating nuke because I want a nice frame of open brood to lure nurse bees above the queen excluder. So when I pick up the frame of open brood to put it into the nuke box later today, that I know that I A, don't have a queen, and B, that I have mostly nurse bees, because nurse bees move into forager bees, which then allows for also the open brood, gives the open brood time to cap, pupate, and hatch out. And by that time that the brood is hatching out, the virgin queen cell that I'm going to install, that ends up actually hatching out and ready to mate by the time the brood hatches out. So the nukes kind of work in succession with each other. So this frame, we don't know where the queen is. We haven't seen her. So I'm going to move this frame up, but I'm going to make sure that the queen's not on it. So I shake the bees off. Okay, this is going to tip here. Now let's have a look here. This has got brood and honey, mostly honey. Might be hard pressed. I might have to take that brood and honey frame for the mating nuke, which I don't like putting too much honey in my mating nukes, but looks like the choice isn't really there. So this is drawn out, so I'm going to rotate this to put it in here. Ta-da! So I'm going to take this one. It's got some brood on it, but it's got nice pollen, but it is pretty heavy with honey. Let's see what we're going to do. Actually, I'm going to leave this like that. We're going to put this away in here too. And then we have the frames of drawn comb that we like to use. Because again, we want to make sure that there's room for the queen to lay for brood. Okay. Now I'm interested to see what I have inside this box. Because I have a feeling that I might not have pulled the last mating nuke out of this box. So we might find a couple of mating nukes already pulled up. So let's have a peek. So make sure the excluder's on properly, that the queen can't slip through. So the queen can't slip through there. See if this sucker is still. So let's have a peek. Because I feel like I might not have pulled out the last mating nuke that I pulled up here, because there's quite a lot of bees up. So I've got drawing out comb, more comb drawing out. If you've noticed, that's probably the 8th frame of foundation that they're drawing out in this hive. Always encouraging more wax production. Yeah, so this is pollen and hatching brood. They're backfilling it. And look at that beautiful pollen frame. Oh, God, I love beekeeping. Okay, so let's have a peek. What is in this one? I feel like this might be open brood already. Oh yeah, so this is open brood. So this could be a frame that we could put into a nuke. It's got nice feed and lots of open brood. So let's just make the nuke. We might as well. With the one that's already pulled up. Because if there's open brood up here, they've already moved up, and we know the queen's not up here, right? Because we saw eggs and larvae below. Here's a nice second frame. Boom. This is going to make a really big mating nuke. So we're going to put this in here. So I've got feed and brood, lots of brood, foundation on both sides. Boom. My mating nuke is made. Now, if I want to reset this, here's a frame of open brood above. Nurse bees are going to cover this. I can come back in a couple hours and take it. But I'm going to have a peek here. I think there might be enough for another mating nuke. Yeah, see, look at all that open brood. So I did this the other day. I've been doing this a lot, and I guess I missed this one when I pulled the nuke. There's a couple I missed because we ended up grafting on the fly the other day and raising queens out of the blue. So yeah, so we're going to take these two and do mating nuke. I'll grab the other one.
just tuning in, we are making some mating nukes. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments and we'll have some answers for you. Hopefully.
So we've got 2 drawn combs here. So we're just replacing what we're taking. If you don't always be putting in foundation to draw out comb in the brood nest, above the super they don't use it too much. Okay, so we've got, boom, lots of nurse bees, lots of brood. Put it together, empty frame on both sides because I want them to draw out the wax and the mating nuke. We don't want too much space in here or else they'll end up becoming honey bound, and those virgin queens that hatch out in these colonies, they won't have anywhere to go. So we want to make sure that there's always room for them to be busy. So we've got 2 new drawn comb. Here's a foundation that was being drawn out. Actually, we'll turn it so that the vacant side faces the heart of the brood nest where it's warmest and the more young bees. And then another frame. Here you can see the wax moths have been in it. That's fine. You can put this into the hive. The bees will clean it right up. So don't worry about it being immaculate. You'd be impressed by the number of bees and how well they do. Now, I'm not forgetting we have 3 honey frames tipped up over there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a honey super on this hive, because if they want to be putting honey away, then they should be putting honey away. So I'm going to take out the foundation that I have in this box because it's not in the brood nest. So the bees aren't really going to pull foundation very well above the brood nest. And I'm going to put the honey kind of on the periphery because I've already drawn it out. I want the heart of the brood nest to have empty space for honey stores. So again, triple checking for queen, making sure I'm not moving her above the excluder. So these are unripened frames of honey going up. So always throughout your beekeeping season, you should be removing honey out of the brood nest. Okay, last but not least, we are going to quickly have a look at the graft that I started 2 days ago. And I put in the finisher yesterday. So I started them in a shook swarm. And this is what we're doing, like it's course materials for the queen rearing course that we're building right now with the Alberta Beekeepers Commission. This is closed. Yeah, okay. Just going to tuck these in the shade here for a second. I don't want them to overheat. So what we did was I made a graft yesterday into a shook swarm, and then after they were in the shook swarm, which is basically an enclosed ventilated box full of nurse bees with honey and pollen but no brood, you leave them that way for 24 hours, and then you go into your colony. And for this one we did Hive 90, and if you follow our Instagram stories, we did a hygienic test of Hive 90 and got 100% on our hygienic testing through using liquid nitrogen test. And Renata, her PhD research was on genetics at the Minnesota Bee Lab. So I was very excited that her test came up really good for the quality of stock I'm producing. So I grafted from that. We put the graft into the starter for 24 hours so they can start raising that larva. And then I put it in a queen right finisher. So this is queen right. There's queen below here laying eggs. And above I have open brood graft that started. Open brood. Okay. So let's have a peek and see how my graft did. What was the take?
Cynthia's asking, is
Yeah.
100% good?
Oh, that's a good question. So hygienic testing is finding out your worker bees, your nurse bees' sensitivity to dead bees or sick bees underneath the capping. So that's the pupa state. And so when we poured the liquid nitrogen into a coconut can, of like a can of soup almost, we freeze killed the brood in that 4-inch diameter hole. And that is 100 eggs, larva, pupa. And so when we put it in for exactly 24 hours, what we're doing is we're seeing if those babies after we killed them, without perforating the capping of the cells, if the worker bees were sensitive enough to realize quickly that the babies underneath the capping were dead and remove them. So I had 100%, which means my bees are very sensitive to the health and well-being of the pupating bees underneath the capping. That's not always the case. But I think because I've been breeding bees that are not used in treatment and they are exposed and pressured with disease often, that I think I'm naturally, the bees that aren't sensitive, they don't make it. So here we have the grafts. I'm just going to peel this up a little bit. Let's move open brood over. Got a little bit of a frame feeder up here to make sure that they're well fed, and let's have a peek. So here's the graft. So for a graft, we have 1 miss on the top row, 1, 2, 3 misses in the second row, and 1, 2, 3, 4 misses, 5 misses in the bottom. So pretty good take, which I'm actually pretty stoked about this. This is great because I did it on the fly. So we're looking and you can see, oh, sorry, little queen cell. You can see here how it's kind of white and not see-through, transparent. But then the misses, if you look at them, they're transparent all the way through. So the reason that these aren't fully transparent is that's all royal jelly. So you can see it really visible in the blue and in the yellow. Royal jelly. This one has no royal jelly, so you can see which ones have taken and which haven't. So we've got 15, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. So I have 37 queen cells that a week from 6 days from now are going to need to be moved into mating nukes. And that's why I'm always making mating nukes, is because I have mating nukes full of virgins right now that haven't flown yet. So these 23 by 6 days from now need somewhere to go. And so that's why we're pulling these nukes of 2 frames of open brood, because by the time that open brood is capped, these cells are going to be ready to go in. And cells are capped for brood on day 9, and then they're capped and pupate from day 9 to day 21. So we're going to have 12 days until all the brood hatches out of the mating nuke. And in those 12 days, our virgin queen will hatch and then have 10 days to go on our nuptial flight. And ideally, by the time all the young bees are hatching out, that virgin will start laying, and then we'll have lots of young, vigorous nurse bees to tend her brood. But then also, she'll lay out into that, which then creates a 21-day cycle again. I cage that queen and sell it, introduce another virgin, and the cycle begins where we aren't having the issue inside our mating nukes of it being honey-bound. So a mistake that can happen is if you put a mating nuke full of capped brood, the capped brood will hatch out, and then you run into a problem where you have now a larger foraging population and no brood inside those combs. So now your colony is going to backfill that brood space with honey. So by the time that queen is ready to lay eggs, she might not have anywhere to lay. And then I'm constantly pulling honey frames out of mating nukes, which is a lot of work. And dropping in drawn comb, and it ends up being a mess. So always, always make your mating nukes out of open brood. So you're constantly pressuring that succession to make sure brood is always occupying a cell space so that honey doesn't end up occupying that cell space. So yeah, so there we go. We made a split using the topping method, which means I can go back now. We could probably do that now. Have a look, and you would see that box will be full of bees above the queen excluder. All I gotta do is just drop it on a new bottom board and inner cover and walk away, and I don't have to worry about drift. Then we also made mating nukes. We could use the same method, but in this case I had a funny little setup. But realistically what we wanted was open brood up, honey up, and then we made sure there was space inside the colony, and we come back, and any frames of open brood covered in bees as nurse bees, so that my mating nukes are loaded with nurse bees and open brood. And then I have my graft. So that's pretty much it for today. Any other questions?
Yeah, if you have any final questions, we'll hang on here for another couple minutes. But otherwise, thanks for joining us for Live from the Hive. We are planning on doing this every 2 weeks. Hopefully we'll have a schedule out for you guys so that if you want to schedule us during your lunch hour, you can do that. But otherwise, on our calendar this month or for the rest of the month, we have our All About Queens mini course that's still available to take until the end of June. If you haven't done so already, we have our Better Beekeeping business happening tomorrow. And next month we have Michael Bush joining us for our Master Academy webinar session.
Next session, what we're going to be doing is the Live from the Hive is we're actually going to go to the mating yard. So we'll go through some mating nukes. We might be caging queens. We might be seeing we will be dropping queen cells. And we will be looking through and having a peek at what our mating yard looks like. And it'll be really fun. So I hope you guys can join me.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining today.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.